Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Ginger Runner Live, episode number 91. Tonight I have an awesome guest. I'm really excited about tonight's show because Devon Yanko is on the show. An incredible runner, just placed first female, second overall at Javelina Jundred. Plus, she had some pretty incredible races earlier in the year that we're going to talk about tonight. So many questions from me, and I know you guys have tons of questions too for Devon. So if you do, you can either type them right into the live chat room, which I'll be keeping my eye on throughout the course of the show, or of course use Twitter and the hashtag GRLive, and I'll be able to pull those questions up, pop them up on the screen. Grab your adult beverages or other beverages, however you choose. Sit back, relax, and get ready for tonight's show. I'm stoked. Devon Yanko, episode number 91. Let's get started. Ginger Runner. Yes. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in live. Monday, episode number 91 of Ginger Runner Live. I'm your host, Ethan Newberry, aka the Ginger Runner. And tonight's guest, I haven't had her on the show before, which is a bummer. She should be on the show every week. She's incredible, super inspiring athlete. Just finished Javelina Jundred in first place female, second overall. Just an incredible performance. We're going to find out all about it tonight, as well as a performance from Ultra Trail Cape Town, which I can't wait to hear the stories from this race, which is an incredible global race in South Africa that I can't even begin to describe, because I'm sure Devon's stories are going to be incredible. Sit back, relax. Let's have some fun tonight, guys. Here she is, Ms. Devon Yanko. Yay! How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Honestly, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here.
I've had so many tweets and people reaching out like, you got to get Devon. You got to get Devon. This was well before Javelina. So I'm just excited to finally have you on. Well, how are you feeling? How are you?
It's actually funny. I was just thinking, it's not usual for me to talk to anybody but myself at night, because for the last year I've been on the night shift. So that's working at my bakery overnight by myself. So the only people I ever talk to are myself, but it's so nice to be here. So
let's actually start there. You are the owner proprietor of a wonderful bakery in the Bay Area. That's actually how I first heard about you. It was when I was up there traveling and running. I forget if it was the San Francisco Marathon or the North Face. It was 50K in 2012 or something like that. But people are like, you got to go to MH Bread and Butter, the best bakery in the Headlands. How did that start? Where did that come from, and how's that been?
It's been an adventure. I was telling a guy I was running with this weekend that I think it's a lot like having children, where he was like, does it just bring you so much happiness? Isn't it so much fun? And I was like, when you have a child and they have cried for like 3 weeks straight, and you're like, on a day-to-day basis, this might not be great, but when you look at what you've created, it's really awesome. And like, I go in there on a weekend now, and part of me freaks out because there's so many people in there, but part of me is like, I also know all these people, and like, this is a community that we built, and we built it around, food that we're passionate about, but with and doing artisan food in the way we want to, but also building the community, which is really important to us. My husband was a baker before I was. He taught me how to bake. That's his passion. And I was more of a personal chef cook. And he was at a bakery called Tartine, which is world famous, and there for almost 10 years. But as most things, when you've kind of been somebody's apprentice for a really long time, eventually you want to go and see what you can do on your own. So I told him just to give me like a really solid heads up, like a year, to be like basically 2 years I needed. And so we started working on this in 2012, and we opened in 2013, and just been kind of flying along since then. We ended up in a space that is a lot bigger than this like tiny little mom and pop shop that we had initially imagined. So it's been a lot bigger of an endeavor than we thought it was, which is why my running's been a lot, more restrained in the last couple of years, but it's been worth it. And I know it's kind of just, it takes that kind of time to create what you want on that size and scope.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine starting your own business from the ground up and wanted to dedicate all your time into that. Did you take a break from running at all? Was it something you're like career for a year, back to running as soon as possible, or was there always a shared
Well,
passion?
for Nathan and I met as runners, and when we were opening, we had my best friend from Seattle come down and be our general manager, and he's also a runner. So we basically would work and run and occasionally sleep, and that was like, we need a meeting. Let's the three of us go for a run. And so
Yeah.
even when we were first getting open, I think my lowest week that had nothing without illness or injury, which I didn't have much of either. I think my lowest week was like a 30-mile week, but I was actually thinking about it this
It's
weekend.
actually pretty good.
I think I averaged at least 70 miles a week during this period of time. But not necessarily like, I kind of like, no matter what my fitness, could run like a 245 to a 250 marathon. And that was about it. Like I kind of was like in relatively good shape for me, but I never was able to really, anytime I focus on something, it would be like, oh, just kidding, you're gonna get an ulcer, or or like it's like we were gonna go on vacation, and the night before we were supposed to leave, like our $100,000 oven decided to break down. So it's like, it's just, so the running is possible, but it's just on the scale of like, I'm just happy to be able to do what I can do on a daily basis. But having race goals, especially ultra goals, is just not possible. So I did marathons because it was kind of like, I was a little bit, like I said, I could have a reasonable expectation of being able to run a certain pace. But it's like, I can be back before the lunch rush. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember following you and seeing you drop incredible half marathon times and the occasional marathon time. Was your passion always to the trails? I mean, you have such an amazing community up there. Was that always something that drew your focus?
Yeah, I mean, I run way more trails than I do road. I do specific workouts on the road, but our bakery is 1 mile from the trails, and our house is 2 miles. And when I started running, in my first marathon was in 2005, and my first ultra was in 2006, and I went pretty much straight into ultra. Partially because I thought I was kind of like bored by the idea of just trying to run a faster marathon.
Right.
And I found the first time I trail ran that I just was really excited by the challenge. And it was like, doesn't matter if I run the same course on a different day, there's way more variables that are going to affect my performance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did mostly exclusive trail running until I did like the road 100K and things like that. But I love the trails. I love the road too. Most people don't have a place in their heart for both, but I do. I find that the challenges that they present are unique. So I went in 2011, I tried to qualify for the marathon trials. And that was when I kind of got more into, people kind of accused me of like quitting ultra running. And I'm like, you can't quit. Like, I didn't like leave a club or, it's just, I focused on that. And I actually ran some of my best ultras from marathon training. So I went to the 2012 trials, and then I had my 2 best road ultras to date, which were 2 Oceans and Comrades. But again, as I've kind of said a lot, I don't think people in the States necessarily have given enough credit to what's going on overseas in South Africa with ultras. And I'm obsessed with South Africa, so I go there as often as possible.
Well, I mean, let's go to there, because you had a race this year that I only saw really in photos and in interviews, post-race interviews, and in blog posts and stuff like that. Describe Ultra Trail Cape Town. What inspired you to go there? And kind of what happened, because I've been told you have incredible stories from the race. you had quite the day out there too. Help set the stage here.
So to back up, I studied abroad in Cape Town in 2003. So I was there. I lived there for 3 or 4 months, and I've done 2 Oceans, which is their big ultra on the road, which is a 56 kilometer race and super competitive. I've done that twice, including this year. So Cape Town, like the goings on in the trail scene in South Africa and on the ultra scene in general I'm well aware what's going on, but I was actually reading Sally McRae's blog about Western states. And I get to the bottom and I see upcoming races, and I see that she had listed Ultra Trail Cape Town. And I was like, I didn't even know there was a 100K trail, because I have never done trail running down there. I've only done the Two Oceans, which is on the road.
Right. I
clicked on the website and this beautiful picture came up, and it's just like the ocean and the mountain. And I was like, I'm going. And I was like, I don't know when it is, but I'm going, you know. And that was, you know, a lot of this year was a struggle for me. It was kind of like a lot of false starts in terms of my racing, where I kept thinking, oh, now's going to be the time, but now's going to be the time. And it just wasn't. I was still on the night shift, so I just couldn't focus on racing. And I had a little bit of tendonitis in my foot that stopped me from going to comrades. So it's just kind of been it had been a disappointing year. But when I saw Ultra Trail Cape Town, like just looking at that and like looking at the course and being like, that is totally outside of my comfort zone. It has like more than 15,000 feet of climbing. It's super technical, and I'm training for marathons right now. It's going to be great. So it was important enough for me that we made it work. You know, I had to figure out with work schedule and bakery schedule, but I've left working on the night shift. We've actually found somebody to do it. So that was kind of like a needed reset for me. So I went down there actually for 3 weeks. I went down first and I ran the Cape Town Marathon, which is an IAAF silver race. So I had thought it would be really fast and I would be able to run a qualifying time. Mm-hmm. And I got my first bad luck of weather, and it was 80% humidity and 80 degrees, which, you know, is basically impossible to run a fast marathon in. None of the elite field ran what they could have. So I recovered from that, and I met, like, it was just instantly like the trail community there just welcomed me with open arms. I was going to Tuesday night trails, and then we'd go to Breakfast Club on Friday, and I became really good friends with people like who'd take me out on the trails and show me parts of the course. Ryan Sands and Kane Riley, who are probably the two most well-known runners down there, took me on like the hardest part of the course, and the whole time we're going up I was like, oh god, I'm gonna die in this race. This is so hard. Like, we're going up all these big, it was just these huge rocks. It's like the climb up Table Mountain. So if you look at the course profile, it looks scary, and it's way more scary than that. So race day came, and I got my second bad luck with weather. As you know, here in California, it's been summer, and where I live, that means like 90 degrees, and it's been a drought, and our race day came, and it was freezing cold and raining. So I was a little bit nervous about the very technical aspect of the race, and also because I was wearing Huacas, which have absolutely no traction. So I'm like, okay, this is gonna be awesome. But you know, I went into it, it's the first ultra that I've gone into where I'm like, I don't feel like I have ultra specific training. I had run 150K in August in the middle of a 120-mile week. And you know, spent a lot of time hanging out at the aid stations, like, oh, it's old friends, hey, you know. Yeah. So I was like, it's been 5 years since I ran 100K, and that's a long time. You don't really remember what that feels like. And looking at the times from the previous year, I knew that I was in for a long day. I mean, the winning time last year was over 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sets the standard right there. It's gonna be tough.
So I mean, and I know, like, then I think the men's winner was like just under 11. So, and they had the 15-hour cutoff. So I'm like thinking, I'm either gonna win or miss the cutoffs. You know, it's gonna be, you know, I'm gonna be like in this sandwich of like, I'm either racing or I'm trying not to be, you know, pulled out of the race. So, you know, but the day unfolded really well, and I felt really strong on the initial climbs. I was actually with the other, like with the Landy Grayling. She was running the 65, and she's totally a badass South African girl. And the other two girls who ended up in front of me at the day's end, we were all kind of together, even up the biggest climb up to the top of Table Mountain, which for me was like a huge victory in itself, because for a long time I bought into what I perceived other people thought about me, which is that I'm not a good climber. But this year, training for Comrades, which was an uphill year, I basically did all uphill, so I became a very good uphill runner.
Nice.
So it was really cool to see that and feel that, and I felt really comfortable, and I knew it was gonna be a long day, but I got to the top of that climb, and as I knew it would be, the temperature dropped from like in the 40s to like, or it was like maybe in the 50s, but we were soaked, and it was like 20 degrees drop. And so I'm like, get to the top, and suddenly I'm soaking wet, my sleeves are wet, my gloves are wet. So I'm trying to get my pack off to get my raincoat, but what does a raincoat do when you're already soaking wet, you know? And so my body temperature dropped really fast, and I started getting really cold really fast. And the other girls ran off, and a couple of guys, and I made chase, but the top of the mountain is very flat and it's very technical. And so there's standing water on top of technical rocks. And now I'm hypothermic and I can't feel my feet. So I basically just cried my way across the mountain, like, I can't do this. This is horrible. Like, it was like, I was like, I'm gonna drop it like 10 miles because I'm so cold, and my feet were just getting wrecked because I couldn't feel them, and I'd step on a rock and my feet would slide between the rocks, and it was just, it was really, really mentally challenging. I got to the aid station where the 65K turns one way and the 100K goes the other way. And I was just like, I could totally just take the 65. Like, it's totally legal. I could get the 65 finish. Like, and I don't know how. It wasn't even like a conscious coping mechanism. I didn't make a choice. I just went to the table, and I hadn't been eating or drinking anything. And we're like, oh, I'm like a third of the way into the race. It's all in kilometers. So I'm like, I don't even remember what kilometer it was. It was really early. I hadn't eaten or drank anything. So I just started eating gummy candies and like filled my water bottle and just started walking out of the aid station. And at that, my feet started to warm up a little bit because we were kind of on the side of the mountain where it's a little bit warmer. Mm-hmm. And then I could feel how bad my feet hurt. So then I started crying because my feet hurt. And finally, it just kept kind of going that way, where it was like, my feet would warm up and they'd hurt, and then it would get cold and I'd be hypothermic, or I'd have to do another gnarly climb. And like, in the first 50K, my goal was just don't cry at the next aid station. And I think it took to like 65 kilometers to actually achieve that goal, because it was just like, it has every type of terrain, and there was this big climb before 50K where I actually was like crawling over these rocks, like bouldering, and I slipped and I fell backwards and I hit my elbow on a rock, and I thought I had broken my elbow. It hurt so bad. So I'm like trying to get down the rocks with like, I can't use my arm, and I'm so upset. And I mean, the first 50K took me like 7 hours, like, and it was just like, I came into 50K, I was like, no way, I'm done. Yeah. But part of the great thing is that I knew where I was, and I knew somebody would have taken care of me, but I didn't actually know anybody at that aid station. And so there were these two guys that are running with, and they're like, you're not quitting, you're just going to keep going. And I was like, well, if you give me some French fries, maybe I'll keep going. So I had some French fries and I kept going. And I was like, well, maybe I knew the next section was supposed to be runnable. And that kind of saved my whole day, because I ended up running the next 10 miles. Like, I went from being like 15 minutes back to like, gaining some time, or, whatever. Like, I actually started feeling good about it.
Right.
But then, the later sections are hard again. But there came a point where I just made this decision where I was like, I'm just not going to quit. And it suddenly just made it that much easier. Like, then it was kind of like, the section between 77K and 90K was like just laughably hard because of the water. Like, it's super technical, and I had run it with Ryan and Kane. So I knew it was like a bunch of rock hopping, just like all rocks. And then if it wasn't rocks, it was these wooden like pathways, like planks. So in the wet, that's horrible. And then there was probably like 25 what would have been nice little stream crossings, but because the water had been coming off the mountain all day, it was like ankle deep water. So I just and then the downhill was like mud that I was like slaloming through the trees, like holding on so I wouldn't fall on my ass. Like, I'm just grabbing these trees and going downhill. But I also found during that race, like when I made the decision not to quit, it just gave me this sense of like, a deeper, more profound sense of like what I'm capable of. To just make that decision, even though things were so hard and I had 1,000 reasons why I could have quit, like legitimately in my own mind, like it was nice to be like, I'm strong enough to do this, and I'm strong enough that all these things can be wrong, and then I can still be running. Like when there were sections where it was really late in the race, like at 90K, you basically, they do one of those, my favorite race director things where they just mark up the side of the hill. And he did that, and I was like, I just started laughing. But I get to the top, and there's this contour trail, and my feet really hurt. I mean, they just been wrecked all day, and I had a foot injury earlier in the year, so I was like kind of worried about it. And I just made this decision to like ignore the pain in my feet, because my legs actually felt really good.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because I probably was just like walking a lot, but and like climbing over things. But I just started running really hard, and to get to that finish line after going through all of that, and like so many times being like so sure that I couldn't convince myself to keep going. When I crossed that finish line, it was like the most satisfying thing that I've done in so long. And I really felt empowered by that. And like it was also really cool when I crossed the finish line. Like I knew everybody, and that community was all there waiting for me. And it was just like, this is like, yes, this is ultra. This is exactly why I love ultra. It's just that, like, we all just went through this thing that was so hard, but we're all like sitting together at the finish line, sharing these stories about like how hard it was and how epic our days were, and like just really being all together. And on top of just being so proud of myself for doing something that I was terrified of and that was outside of my wheelhouse. I came back, and I was, one of the things I said to my friends down there, I was like, people in the States don't even know how much street cred I should have right now, because that was so hard. But nobody's going to give me credit for it because nobody understands, but it's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, you had to be there to witness it, see it, feel it, to know it. Yeah.
And I mean, I luckily was there for long enough to really like, this race is so pretty. It goes through some really amazing parts of Cape Town, and it's still, it's a mountain that's a lot. It's kind of like here where the city is actually built around the base of the mountain. So you kind of have, like, when you go up on the top of the mountain, like the views are so amazing. It's like you can see the ocean, you can see the city, you can see everything. So if I was gonna, tell people to come to Cape Town, it was like, for a trail race, like, this is it. Like, it is the best. And they've worked so hard on that race. It was only the second year, but you could have fooled me. Like, everything about the organization was done really well, and the community was really amazing. So yeah, it really just reinvigorated my my feeling of like, I haven't felt that way about ultras in a long time, because of work. I've been on the outside, and this, like, I wanted more of that, and that's how I ended up signing up for Javelina. And I was like, I want to do something that terrifies me in that way, like, that I don't think I can do, or I don't know I can do. And like my first run back, I had this, like, what I thought was a really stupid idea. I'm like a mile into my run. I was like, I should run 100-miler right now. I was like, I should do Javelina. I think it's coming up. And I emailed my coach, and he was like, do you think you're mentally prepared to run 100 miles right now? And I said, I've never been more prepared to run 100 miles than I ever have in my entire life. Because of like everything, like I said, at Ultra Trail Cape Town, I kept going, and I don't know how I kept going. It was like, it wasn't some like mental tactic. I had actually been working with a sports psychologist over the summer, to kind of help me get my mojo back, and kind of, just help me get on the right track mentally, after kind of a rough spring and early summer. And I definitely think that helped, but like in the moment, it wasn't like, I was like, oh yes, remember where she said you should use this tool. It wasn't like that. It was just like sheer will. I mean, there were things like I would say to myself at a particularly low point, I was like, I don't want to cast a shadow over everything that I've done here and how much I've enjoyed this trip. I've been here for 3 weeks. Like, I came here to do this, to finish this, and it will change how I feel about it if I don't finish. Like, no matter if I'm crawling across the finish, then like I will feel better about that than if I do quitting. And I mean, the day humbled everybody. The guy who won Comrades this year, who's a national hero because he's actually South African, and that's not super common for Comrades these days to be won by South Africans. He finished at the cutoff, and he ran Comrades in like 5 hours. So like it humbled him, and he is an amazing runner. And he's elite. He could have pulled the plug at any point. Like, I'm not having my day, I'm just going to walk away. But he didn't, and that shows what this race is really about, and it shows what ultra's about in a lot of ways. Yeah.
That's we got a lot of great questions coming from the chat room as well as Twitter, so I want to make sure that we get to those too. So I've got one pulled up here from Twitter that I'll ask in just a second. I'm just really curious, at what point was it for you, Devon, that your mind went from competitive, elite, I want to place well, or I'm here to race, to now I just want to survive this? Because you mentioned your mind at some point made the decision to let's just keep going.
Yeah.
How was that transition from I want to podium or I want to win to I just want to see what happens and make sure that I can finish this thing? But then you still managed to pull out a third place.
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting because of how much I was aware of how challenging the course was going to be. If you watch they did a really lovely race video. And they interviewed me before the race. I actually basically say like I'm there to get across the finish line. So I kind of went in with this attitude where I'm like, I can't legitimately say like I'm here to compete with these people who live there, who know these trails, who like are specifically trained for this. Like, yeah, for me as a competitive person, like I want to be in that position, but I also knew that I had not put in the requisite work, the specific work to do that necessarily. So it wasn't the first. It was like the fact that I was like actually with the leading women at the beginning. Like I was like kind of surprised. I was like, cool, I feel great. And I'm totally within myself. So that was a nice boost for me mentally. But as I was getting reports through the day, like most of the time it was just like, I'm crying and they're like, but you're only 5 minutes. They're trying to make me feel better by telling me I'm only 5 minutes behind or 10 minutes behind. And I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. So it wasn't really a conscious shift. It was really, the shift was more about going from like this, I'm going to drop, and being very determined in my mind that was okay, to determining that was not an option I would choose. And I credit two people in that decision. And it's like, one's Gina at Western States. And it's also Pam Smith at Western States, because they're competitive people and they had a day that was harder and they just made that decision. And you can't always make that decision, right? You're not always in the position where it's just like, I'm not having a good day, but I can get to that finish line. Like nothing is like going to kill me. But it's like, it's so admirable. And I didn't really understand until the moment that I just said, you're not stopping, that like to have that kind of day. Yes, I still ran. I mean, my time this year I would have been second last year. It was still a very competitive time. I mean, I ran 13 hours, 13 minutes, and I wasn't actually that far behind second place, but like it was just a very profound moment to have that realization that I can just take that option off the table.
I think it's also something that we'll probably touch on when we start talking about Javelina as well. You have this incredible ability to dig really deep, not give up, continue to push, and continue to perform incredibly well. And that's definitely what I want to touch on with Javelina as we get to it. But questions first. Yeah. This one comes from Twitter from Tim. Did you, this kind of goes back to scheduling. Did you often have to transition between night work and being up during the day? This is probably back when you were doing the night shifts at the bakery and stuff like that. How do you handle training while transitioning?
It's very hard. So the first 6 months that I was on the night shift, I worked 7 days a week from 6 p.m. till 2 a.m. And then we started doing a rotation, which was I was working every Monday and Tuesday, and then I'd work 5 days, and then Monday and Tuesday, and then another baker would work 5 days, and then I do Monday and Tuesday. So I was basically working 20 days a month on the night shift. Mm. I actually handled being 7 days a week on the night shift a lot better than the transition. the transition's really hard because you're suddenly going from like, you're trying to go back to your normal life. It's like, oh, it's my first week back after being on the night shift. I was always a wreck, and because I would be like, I have to catch up on my whole friend life, and I want to run with all my friends and train with all my friends and do all these things, and I would just kill myself. And in the summer, it was particularly bad because it was so warm during the day that I just basically didn't do any sort of like night shift transition. I just basically went to bed when I got home and would get up at 5 a.m. anyways. Oh. And so I get like 3 hours of sleep so I could get my runs in, and then usually just collapse for a couple hours in the afternoon. I did not do this particularly graceful. I mean, I could still train. Like, I am a very durable person. That's been true throughout my running career. I can handle, like, I'm a good high mileage runner, things like that. But I've had 3 doctors this year tell me that I needed to quit my job, so I didn't obviously do it very well.
Oh man.
My husband, I was like, I have a note from the doctor that says I have to quit. He's like, who are you gonna tell? And I was like,
bow bow.
It's just about really prioritizing what matters at that particular moment, I think. Yeah. For me, like, I had to do the business, and I wanted to do my running, and I wanted to sleep, and like everything else is kind of, my husband's supportive of what we do, and we've worked out a system over the last 2.5 years of like, just, we've pared down our life so much that like, when I do have a day off, I'm often like, what do I do with my time? I don't even know what to do with myself. So it's just about you have to prioritize yourself and your needs on those days in the transition, and place a high priority on sleep. So
yeah, I think sleep is like the absolute cure for everything. I feel like it's.
I mean, right before I left, I did my last, like 1 week before I left for South Africa. That was my last night shift, and from that day, it took 6 weeks of me sleeping 10 to 14 hours a day, like regular sleep schedule, before I actually started naturally waking up. Not at that kind of junction, like where I actually would start waking up at like an 8-hour thing. So it's just like, if you have to work on the night shift, like, figure out a way to get off the night shift is my advice.
That's the best advice. if you're doing this thing, best advice is to not do this thing. So
I mean, all of science, all the scientific studies have shown that working on the night shift is terrible for your body. And
yeah, I can imagine.
So yeah.
We got other questions. One from Kimosabe. Devon, what's the best part about trail and ultra running that really draws you in?
Wow, we're going to go on forever. I hope everybody has all night.
We could answer this in our Javelina coverage.
I think I can sum it up because I remember the feeling I had in my very first ultra. I ran Headlands 50K after like never touching a trail in my life. And all I knew about trail running was that I got to walk up hills, which I thought was really awesome. And I ran that race with just like kind of just a level of freedom that I had not felt on the road in a long time. And I basically described the way I ran. It was like this silly dog with my tongue wagging, just like out there, just flopping around and just like having a good old time. And like, that's what trail running to me, like when I am really in like looking at it the right way, when I free myself, when I'm happy, that's how it feels. It just feels free, and it feels free in a different way that just like any good run can. But like the trails are so much more conducive to that because of the level of beauty and the challenge and just like the solid, like being out there on your own. So there's my short answer.
I really want to find out more about Javelina. We had Jamil on the show earlier, 2 weeks ago, talking a bit about leading into the race. It's a huge 100. It's been on my radar for a long time. It's a big party, as well as being very difficult and sneaky 100, seeing as there's not a huge elevation profile, but I guess it has one of the lowest finishing rates of all 100s in the US. Why this 100, first of all? Is there an end goal? Like, were you looking for a qualifier for Western or any of that kind of thing? And what was your mindset going into it?
Ultra Trail Cape Town was actually, I went there to get my qualifier for states, so I already had that worked out. because I had crewed for Brett Rivers, and it was the first time since I dropped it States 5 years ago that I actually was like, I want to go back. So I had my one ticket, so I have no chance in hell of getting in, but at least I have done my piece to do that.
Yeah.
So Javelina, it's been on my radar for a long time in terms of something that I thought that if I ever wanted to do another 100, I thought would be good course for me. I thrive on runnable courses, but I also know that there's no such thing as an easy 100, and it really bothers me when people say that there's such thing as an easy 100. Like, there's no such thing as an easy 100. It's 100 miles. As people tell you all the time, I don't even want to drive that far. No, it's hard. And Javelina is sneaky, like you said, because there's just other factors at play. So when I, had this crazy wild hair to do 100, Javelina came to mind because I knew it was on my list of ones I wanted to do, and I knew that it was coming up very rapidly. And if one thing I knew coming off the 100K was I was like, I just ran 62 miles on what people would consider like marathon training. Mm-hmm. And I feel really good. Like, I ran 50 miles the week after the 100K. The next week I ran 100 miles and then 80 miles. And then I did like 30 miles the week of the race. But I felt like, mentally I was, I had that, like, I have learned just to not quit. So I was prepared for that in 100. I was prepared for that out for the not best case scenario. And so I just went in with this, like, I want to do something that scares. I wrote this blog before the race that was like, I just want to do something that scares me. Like, I haven't finished a 100-miler since 2008, and it's the only one I've ever finished. And, my other experience was kidney failure and a drop. Like, so it's become this big thing in my head, and I felt just ready to do it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like more training time or more time to think about it wasn't really going to help me in any way. So I went for it. I signed up, and I got a crew together, with my friend EO. She happened to be on she teaches a school that gets like a week off every 3 months or something. And it just happened to coincide. She is a badass, and she's very fast. So I was, I knew I had a good pacer, set up for that. And then Hollis Leonard King, who's been kind of like my mentor in the sport from the very beginning. A lot of people know him. He's been in the sport for a really long time, and mm-hmm. He came out to crew me. He's been my crew at a lot of races, and so he knows me really well. And he's just so steady that, like, the two of them I was really excited to have on my team. So it just kind of came together very organically to get me to the starting line. Obviously, the closer you get to the starting line, the more terrifying it is. You're like, wait, maybe I made a wrong decision. Then I got sick the week before the race, and I just kept coming back to that, like, this is an adventure. I'm doing this because it scares me. I'm going to do it despite the fact that it scares me.
Yeah, this race in particular has one of those. It's notorious for being a bit ruthless. Yeah. In that, it's flat. You're not getting a ton of elevation gain. That makes it, like you said, there is no easy 100. Yeah. But it gets put on people's radars because it is maybe the most approachable. But at the same time, I think it's the most deceiving and probably most difficult. Did you approach this race with a mentality of, I want to go for this? You're coming off of Cape Town. You're coming off of this brutal journey where you performed incredibly well. Are you using that momentum taking you into Javelina, or are you just looking for that finish, having, like you mentioned, not having a finish in a 100-mile race since 2008?
I definitely came in with a little bit of sense of, like, I want to see what I can do, right? I had this sense of, when I did Vermont 100, it was kind of like, the way I saw 100 was like, it's like an inevitable downward slope, right? You start running this fast and you're just going to keep going slower. Yeah. And after what I discovered at Ultra Trail Cape Town is having legs at the end of a race in a way that really surprised me, where I was like, it kind of changes my mentality. It was like, what if I still had legs at the end of a 100-miler? So, yes, I was willing to have, like, I was willing to endure and have a bad day, but I wasn't just going in saying like, I'm not necessarily thinking about that. I'm still going to go out. The way I approached it was this. I first, like immediately after I signed up, I emailed Casey Lichtig and asked her who set the course record last year. And I said, give me all you got. Like, what do I need to know? Because I see this really low finishing rate, but I see this really fast course. And it's like trying to compute that. And so I got a lot of her advice. Jimmy Dean Freeman actually wrote a really good blog like the day before the race that was also really helpful. It's just kind of like the biggest pitfalls that people have with that race. But honestly, I went in, my PR is 18:30, so I was kind of like, I kind of felt like even if I was walking it in, like if I just went like a bat out of hell and like ran for 4 loops and then died for the 2 and a partial loop, like I would probably still PR. But I set up a pace chart in part to keep me, because one of the pitfalls is running too fast. I had a 15-hour time finish with those splits. I had the course record at 16:30 and 17:30, and I said after 17:30 it doesn't really matter because I don't really care.
Right.
Because at that point it's like, what's like for me, it's just that would mean I was just trying to get to the finish line. And you know, the race, like I was ahead of splits from even my 15-hour splits, but that's also deceiving because I had done them evenly just by like, you know, dividing the distance or whatever. But the race didn't really unfold it wasn't like from the start, I was just like, hey, this is my day. This is amazing. It wasn't like that at all. So
just hearing the stories that came out of social media from the race, it's a very active race in the sense that people are always tweeting and sharing photos and all sorts of videos and stuff like that in real time.
Yeah.
It seemed like you had actually a pretty rough time. Earlier on, you went through some sort of low. Do you know what happened? What occurred? Was it a nutrition thing? Was it just a fatigue thing?
So the first 2 loops were fine. I mean, so they do machine washer style. The first 2 loops, actually from the start, I had a little bit of a I kind of mentally had a problem in that, you know, you should never try to conceptualize running the distance ever at all. But I was having a hard time, even just like, I started being really negative at like 3 miles into the race. And I was like, I don't really understand what's going on. Like I should at least just be hanging out for a 15-mile run with some friends, you know, and it was really not like that. I was like really caught off guard to be like, I'm fine. My nutrition's good. Like I haven't even basically started running. So that was a little bit surprising, but I kind of used some of those coping tools I was talking about earlier. I actually just started being like, I'm so great. I'm so wonderful. Like you're a star, you know, like totally cheesy, but like I just had to kind of beat back those voices a lot. And then it was fine for the first 50K, I just felt really good. And I came through the headquarters in 1:56, and my crew Hollis just started yelling at me, and he was like, what are you doing? You're running too fast. And I felt so comfortable. I'm like, please stop yelling at me. I even went to the bathroom and like hid for a minute so that you wouldn't really yell at me. And so the next loop, it was cool then, you know, like I didn't want to run like stupid, but I was running. For me, I knew like my version of comfortable is going to be fast. Like I have marathon speed right now. Like if I try to do anything else, I'm going to do something weird with my stride. So I just was like, you know, first 2 loops, it's cool. I'm just going to hang with it, knowing that the middle of the day was going to be hard.
Right.
Because, you know, like I said, it's been 90 degrees or 100 degrees in San Anselmo, but the desert is different. The desert's very different. There is no shade. Like if you go like this, that's as much shade as you're going to get. And by loop 3, the temperature was just up, and I had been just using liquid nutrition at that point. So I was taking in like 2 bottles of Tailwind per loop, and that like my energy was great. Like I finished 50K and I was like, I can't believe I actually ran 50K. I feel like I haven't run at all. Like my legs felt amazing. But Hollis got on me. He's like, you're not going to be able to run 100 miles on just 400 calories a loop. You need to take more calories. So the next loop, I'm like running along and I tried to take a gel and I threw it up. And that kind of set my stomach off a little bit where like, unless I took a tiny sip of something, I would throw it up. And I got like a really bad stomach cramp. And then my nose started getting stuffed up. So I was like, oh, my cold's back, and then my foot started hurting. So I was like, I must not be recovered from Cape Town because that was only 4 weeks ago. It just kind of like, I built up this story for myself of like all the things that were wrong with me. And, my foot did hurt and I was throwing up and I couldn't take in calories, but like at the same time I'm running like, I'm just running along. I'm still running, like
cranking. Yeah.
Cranking it out. And I slowed down because it was hot, but like my first 2 loops were 156 in like 2 hours. And then my next loop was like around 2:30, but I don't know if that time includes how much time so I came in and I was like, I'm done. It's like 45 miles. I'm like, I'm out. And I'm sure a lot more people saw me on the live feed telling the world how much I hated what I was doing and how done I was on Ultra Sports Live, because I didn't actually know there was a camera right there, but I was friends with the people in the tent, so I was telling them like, oops. Luckily my pacer saw that. She decided to come to the race sooner. So she was at home watching and was like, oh shit, I better get there.
That's great. So
I sat down in the chair and I was, Hollis was like, what do you need? Like, you're fine. You're still running. You're doing great. You're like a bazillion minutes ahead of your fastest split. And I'm like, I don't care. You're an hour ahead of the next girl. I don't care. Like, I'm just done. I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And thankfully for me, the day before I had said in our meeting, there will come a point at the race where I will say very clear-eyed and very logical, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not having fun. And what's your answer? No, And so it was actually funny because Hollis actually, I feel like now it was a trick because he was like, okay, if you need to stop, you can stop. And it was like, but I told you not to let me stop. And so I got pissed. And so I was like, well, I'm going to keep going. So I put.
That's awesome. A little bit of reverse psychology on you.
Well, it was like, at that point too, I did recognize that I had been running that whole time. So at mile 45 and I have not walked a single step, I'm like, I should at least, like, I can run even if I'm worried that my foot, because I had been working on an issue with my massage therapist in my foot that I was worried about flaring up.
Okay.
My heel was getting really stuck. And like, if your heel doesn't move at all, that's a lot of pain and that can cause a lot of issues. So like legitimately it made sense to me, but I was like, I'm not there yet. So I'm just going to run another loop. And I had only liked 1 mile of the last 15. And so I get out my ice bandana, I'm cooler now. And I get about 1 mile out and I was like, nope, I'm gonna hate every step of this loop too. And that entire loop, I basically made it through by being resolved to quit at the end of the loop. I was just like, I can't do this. I hate this. This is ridiculous. I'm just so hot. I'm so done. I'm so over it. I just can't do it. And again, I ran like the same split. I ran like a 2:30. And as I'm coming down, and it's because everybody else is going this way, you have so much support. And like, I'm moping and I'm like, I don't want to do this. And like Jimmy Dean and I had a moment where we like stopped and had a little hug and like had a mutual, like, I don't feel good. Neither do I, and you're kind of like, that kind of actually helped a lot just to like snap me out of that, where it's like, it's not just me. Like, it's the middle of the freaking day. Like, it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the desert. Like, how do I expect to feel? So I finished that loop and I'm totally like determined to just be done. I'm just like, well, I'm done. Because my pacer wasn't supposed to start until mile 75. And so mentally, I did not think that there was a way for me to go like 45 miles of hating it. Well, like 30 miles. Okay, I had just made 30 miles of like not liking it, but it just was, that was really trying. And getting the aid station again, very much like, I don't want to do this. And, now EO's there and Hollis is there and they're just like, oh, you're fine. And, here, come sit down. And I sat down and they're like, what do you want? What do you want? And EO had brought me, I had left at the hotel for her to bring with her a triple shot iced almond milk latte that's like in a little bottle. And I was like, I want that, and I want some aspirin, right? And she had actually, I had realized that she was gonna, like, she had her pack on and she was ready to go, and she was like, all right, we're going now. And I was like, oh. So when I realized that she was gonna go, then I was like, well, she did come all this way. I can't, like, I can't stop now. So I kind of begrudgingly was like, okay, I'm gonna took the coffee, I took the aspirin, ate some gummy candies. At which point I was like, I'm just gonna throw this up, right? So and she was like, well, we'll just walk. And I was like, well, we're gonna have to walk like a third of a mile, because I was like, we'll walk. There's a road going out the clockwise direction. It's at like a third of a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we're gonna walk till then, because otherwise I'm just gonna start throwing up. And I hadn't walked again all day. Like, when I came in and I was telling her everything that was wrong with me, she's like, but you look great. Like, your form is amazing. Like, you look like you haven't run at all. So we start walking, and we make it like a third of a mile. And I'm just like, can't stand walking. Let's go. And we just started running. And something just changed, like having her there. She is somebody who, when I run with, she runs, it's always like on the higher end of my, like, whatever pace range. Like, we're always like pushing. It's not necessarily that we're like hammering every time, but like our easy pace together is harder than my easy pace with other people.
Sure.
And she is very fast and very talented. And like, I had like prayed that I would not make her walk through the desert. Like, I was like, we might not be friends if I make her walk through the desert for like 40 miles. Because it's just, I've done that. It's very hard on a pacer to do that. And but she was like excited to be there, and she was all excited to see the loop. And I just started running and kind of just had this moment where like the caffeine kicked in and the aspirin kicked in, and I kind of just was like, I'm actually like in really good shape. And from then on, it stopped being like, it just that little change in, like my nutrition, hydration like those kind of status changed my mind about everything. And it was like game on from there. I had read this book leading up to the race called How Bad Do You Want It by Matt Fitzgerald. And he talks a lot about going to the next level in your performance. And at that point I realized, not only was I like, I was still ahead of like I was ahead of the course record. I was ahead of 15-hour pace, but like I felt amazing. And I have never run a race in which I crossed the finish line knowing that I pushed everything that I had. Like, I think I adopted very early on kind of this mentality in ultra running was like, always save a little bit. But because I had run now more than 100K and I felt amazing, I kind of started taking risks where it was like, I could totally be fine just like cruising this in, but I have a pacer who I told, if I'm having a great day, I want you to push me and to a level. I want to go to the next level. I want to see what I could do. And it was clear at that point that was the day that I was having. So we just kind of went at it and like went after those last 41 miles. And it just kind of like, I built this momentum that was like, it was incredible to like ask myself for more and just constantly have a little bit more.
Yeah.
And she was amazing, where I'd be like, you have to remind me in 15 minutes to take gel. And like, we just kind of got it down. And I think it was exciting for her to see, because like, she knows me so well as a runner, to know, like, it was clear that I was having this, like, I had just turned into a different animal at that point. And she ran with me for the next two loops, so fifth and sixth loop, and then there's a partial loop. So going into like, there's a aid station 2.1 miles out from the start finish. We were going down and we're going off this rocky section, and I'm just like, I'm pushing and pushing, and I was like, I wonder if I could drop her. Like, I've never dropped her in a run, like, ever. Like, sometimes I'm like, I think she's inhuman, because like, I feel like we just crushed it, and she's just like, that was fine.
No big deal.
Yeah. So I thought I was like, now I'm just trying to crack her. And I'm like, so I said, she was only supposed to run 25 miles with me. I'm not going to ask her to run 41, because that's a lot. And so we're going down the aid station. I was like, I really like, I couldn't have done this without you. I'm kind of getting to that, like, I still have like 13 miles to go or something. Yeah, like 12 or 13. I'm like getting sort of sentimental, like, I really appreciate everything you've done, but I don't expect you to run 41 miles. Let's be real. Like, I was like, I feel too good that you don't need to do that. You can. I love the company. She was like, no, because you're going to just drop me. And I'm just not even going to get to see you finish. So yeah, the last loop was very, I don't know if transcendent is the right word, but I definitely never backed off. Like every step that I had, it was just like, can I give a little bit more? And I stopped, like, I knew at that point, like, I took a gel like 2 miles from the finish line because I was like, you never know. But the last, so I come in, so I leave the headquarters by myself, and you do a familiar section, then you cut down basically halfway through the loop. And all day I had seen the sign that was like 97.3 and then an arrow this way. So me being somebody who just assumed it was actually 100 miles, I was like, it'll be 2.7 miles to the finish. And I come into the little aid station there, and the guy's like, oh, he's like, are you in your last loop? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you're in second place. And I didn't know I had moved up to second place. And he's like, wow, okay. And so I get some water, and he's like, just 4 miles to go. And I was like, I had figured out this whole plan for my, I was pretty sure that I could, EO had told me I could run 2 hours for the final loop, which I thought was just under 9 miles in like an hour and 20 at that point. And that would have put me in at like 14:40-ish. And so I kind of had that in my mind, and I was like, gonna crush it. But she was like, you have 2 hours, you can still break the course record by 20 minutes. So I had some leeway. But at that point I was like, shit, I have like a mile and a half longer than I thought. So I kind of was like, I was really committed at that point to be under 15 hours. So luckily that last section was like all super runnable. I mean, it's all dark, but it was just dirt and like no rocks. There's some technical parts on the course, but it's all runnable, but there are technical parts. But I'm running as hard as I can, just like yelling out into the dark, all sorts of like, different mantras, and just like, oh, like I can't, I'm like, I don't want to miss 50. I'm like, had finally been like allowed myself to accept that I could do that. And so, even the course being long, I still ran 14:52. And I mean, I've never pushed myself like that in the race. So it was a big breakthrough for me in just the way I race, I think.
It was an absolutely incredible race to. Oh, there's a bit of an echo. Do you mind turning your volume down just a slight bit? Yeah, perfect. It was an incredible race to follow via social media. As exciting as it can get when you see people's tweets and updates like Devon just left in second place over. You get hyped up sitting at home just waiting for that one update that's Devon finished in 14:52 or whatever. Incredible performance. Just knowing throughout the day that you hit really low, had a really rough time for a section there, but managed to push through that and then completely dial it up to 11 for 40 plus miles. And then even knowing that the last section alone, you're still pushing your body as fast and furiously as possible. Second overall, first female, 14:52. Incredible performance, Devon. Seriously, round of applause for me. Everyone in the chat room is also giving you applause because you deserve it.
And it was, I think what was more validating is I actually ran the last 41 miles even faster than the guy who won. And he almost broke the men's course record. So that was when I heard that, I was like, oh yeah, girl power. I mean, I beat some very respectable guys. And I have to say that Carl Metzler actually gave me some extra fuel to my fire in that 6th loop. I passed him going out on my final loop, and I had seen him all day, right? And he goes, Devon, what are you doing? As I passed him, like he goes, what are you doing? And I'm like, because it was like 20 miles to go or more,
right?
And I'm like, I'm just crushing it, dude. Like I just feel great. And he's like, I'll see you later. Like I was gonna blow up and he was gonna catch me, and we were just like, all right. We'll see about that.
Challenge accepted.
Yes. And then, so we were, Io and I were running along once it got really dark, like going to that aid station where I told her she didn't have to pace me on the final loop, and we're just yelling, "Run like a girl! Run like a girl!"
It's pretty incredible, Devon, what you did. Are you going back to Javelina?
Oh, never. This is a drop the mic, walk away situation.
well, I think you earned that. I think you earned the right to be able to just go, I'm done. We'll see you guys never. That's it.
Honestly, I very much respect how hard that course, like that course is, and I can see the potential for running really fast times from people, but it's also, you have to execute a really good race in order to do that. And I feel like, if it hadn't been a longer course, I would have run a faster time, but I also, or if I hadn't sat down it's like, if I do all those things, I'm like, maybe I just go to a course. If I want to run a faster time, I go to a course that is more conducive to that, like Rocky, where the only two 100-mile trail times that are faster than this were both set at Rocky. So like, there are courses that are more conducive to running faster. If at some point I'm interested in doing it, it would probably be on a course like that.
It's, also the course record by almost an hour. Yeah. You shaved up the exact minutes. I think Casey's was what, like 15, 40, 40, yeah. 40, something like that. It's just nasty fast. Yeah. I think the note that everyone watching live can take away from this is, don't fuck with Devon. She will destroy you. Absolutely fast, at blazing speed, really, really amazing performance. So let's talk quickly about nutrition. You were talking about Tailwind. You're using Tailwind. Was there anything else that you supplemented with?
In the later parts, well, part of the reason I use Tailwind is because I'm a very, very bad hydrator, and that is why I ended up with kidney failure at Western States. And so I knew that I had to force myself somehow to drink more early and often. And so by making all of my calories in the early miles liquid nutrition, it achieved that goal, because I didn't want to bonk. So if I don't want to bonk, I have to drink. And therefore my electrolytes and hydration were really good. Later on in the day, once it got cooler, and I was kind of switching to one bottle, it was more like diluted Tailwind, because, anything, especially that has electrolytes, can end up messing with your stomach. And since my stomach had been, the heat had caused me some issues, but it wasn't the Tailwind. It was just like the heat itself. So once it was cool, I started taking in gels. So I would take like a bottle of Tailwind, and then I think I took like 2 to 3 gels per loop. So I was just taking goos. I didn't start caffeine until 100K. And then I made sure that at every aid station I was drinking Coke, because like there's a longer section between aid stations there. And it's like that 6.5 miles, you can definitely start feeling that edge of the caffeine. So you have to be very careful with that. Because if I had started caffeine early in the day, that's one of the things that Jimmy Dean said in his blog. It was like, be really wary of the use of caffeine. And I always have been, because like my first 100K, I took a ton of caffeine, and then at 45 miles, I was like, I feel like I'm dying. I just had fallen off that cliff. I just kept it really simple. I think in the past, like I've tried everything. I've tried real food. I've tried, baby food and dates, and that's fine. That works. But one of the things that I've refined over the last couple of years, especially with doing like marathons and things like that, is it's just about getting that quick fuel in and like keeping it simple. So I'm like, if I can take Tailwind, then I'll take Tailwind until I can't take Tailwind. And then I'll try gels, because like those are all very simple things for the body to be able to take in. Like, but that at Ultra Trail Cape Town, it was the opposite. Like I didn't eat a single gel. I survived that entire race on gummy candies and French fries. So
it sounds delicious just in general.
Oh, yeah.
Like a decent,
it was the only good reason to make it to the next aid station. I was like, gummy candy.
French fries. There's a good question here from Kimasabe as well. What's your trail running nemesis? Heat, humidity, stomach, downhill running, etc. What's your nemesis?
Oh, I love downhill running. Actually, I'm like my ninja skill. I'm one of the original ninjas. Most people now know what the ninja loop is, but I'm one of the original ninjas. And I used to our way of welcoming new people was to have them try to keep up with me on Old Springs, and they always learned that they didn't want to do that. I love downhill, not downhill. Until this race, I would have said my nemesis was heat, honestly. My husband loves the heat. He's like, oh, it's only 95. I'm going to go for a run. And meanwhile, I'm like, I'm dying. And, I think that partially because of my experience at Western States, where I was killed by the heat, and, the Cape Town Marathon, I was killed by heat and humidity. But, you can train that too. So, like, I think I slayed that dragon in this race, but I would have said it was the heat. Now I feel like I don't really feel like I have I think I killed them all. And now, in the next race, I'm sure I'll find, my nemesis now is going to be, how do I carry forward what I just accomplished? I feel like I'm hoping to carry what I did into the next race and say, like, I learned how to race differently. But that's going to be I think challenge is a better word. Like, my next challenge is to say, I'm capable of this. And now how do I just bring everything up to that level?
What is next for you?
Lounging and relaxing. This year I had been pursuing the Olympic trials qualifier, but I kind of was pursuing it. I was undercutting that in the way I was approaching it mentally. I was not setting myself up for success, and also lifestyle-wise, like, I'm training really well, and then, like, the night before major races, there was always something that was mentally super taxing. So I would go into almost every race just mentally depleted, which they've scientifically found, like, do a crossword puzzle and then go for a run, and you're going to run a lot slower because you have no more brain power. So I have decided that the trials are in February. And instead of saying, like, I want to make it to the trials, my next goal is to run a marathon PR. And I'm going to attempt that at Houston Marathon, which is January 17th, which is also the last day to qualify for the trials. So the way I think about it is, for me, a marathon PR would actually be the A standard. I have already run the B standard more than, like, 4 times. So that was part of how I was undercutting my goal anyways, was that I was trying to run a time that I didn't necessarily think, it wasn't a big enough challenge for me. So obviously I have good speed right now. And so we're taking a very conservative approach to the next couple of weeks, because I don't need to, like, build a big fitness base or anything. I just need to really respect the recovery. And then we'll do, like, a very short, intense block of speed, and then I'll go for it at Houston Marathon. And if I have a good day, then I'll be at the trials. If not, there may be an ultra in early February, but that's kind of like a 2 paths diverge, and we'll figure which one. But I have most of my year early next year mapped out. I've already bought my next ticket for South Africa. I'm going back in March. So yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, we can't wait to follow you and follow the future endeavors and adventures. As I like to do with all my new guests on the show, guests who I've never had on before, I have a little thing called the Quickie Question Quiz, and I'm just going to ask you, it's a series of questions, rapid fire. You answer with the quickest answer possible. Let me know when you're ready, and I'll just start firing them off.
Ready as ever going to be.
What was your very first race?
My very first race was a half marathon when I was a sophomore in high school. I was a basketball player. I never trained for it, and I just decided, and I like to run, so I'm going to sign up for a half marathon. And I think I ran a 1:56.
Nice. What's your favorite running movie?
Favorite running movie? That's a good question. I don't know.
We gotta make one about Devon.
We can make one about me. There's a documentary about my high school basketball team, so we could just kind of bring me back. We can bring me up to the new now.
We'll Photoshop you into that one.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, exactly. Or are you in it?
What?
Are you already in that one?
We just had the 10-year anniversary of it's called Heart of the Game. I was very enthusiastic in my high school days about basketball.
Nice. This question might be difficult. Trails or road?
I love all my children.
Favorite place to run?
South Africa.
A bucket list race?
Already signed up for it, but it is the Highland Fling in Scotland. I'm also obsessed with Scotland, and I signed up to do that 54-mile race at the end of April.
Guilty pleasure television show?
Oh, which one do I actually want to admit to? I have a couple right now. What's the best? What's gonna make me? Blacklist.
That's great. That's a good show.
There we go.
Favorite pre-race meal?
Oh, I always eat the same thing: steak, potatoes, and avocado, and like salad.
Favorite post-race indulgence?
I always like eating burgers after races. Burgers and fries.
And your favorite running kicks?
I am really into the not yet released the Tracer. It's coming out next year. It's in their speed line. I just wore it for a 22-mile race on the trails. It's a road shoe, but it's just kind of like my dream shoe from them. So look for it next year.
What did you wear at Javelina?
I wore the Huacas.
Nice. And that is it. That is the Quick Question Quiz. Super easy. Well done. Devon, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was probably the easiest interview for me ever. You are an amazing storyteller, and it was really great to kind of relive these experiences with you. If you're watching live, stick around. If you have some questions for Devon, maybe we can ask some quick ones in the post show. But Devon, where can people find you on social media so they can ask you questions or follow you and see pictures and all that stuff?
I am Fast Foodie Cooks on Twitter. I'm just plain old Fast Foodie on Instagram. And my blog is devonyanko.com.
Go check out her blog. She has some wonderful race recaps and stories there that you guys will definitely want to check out and read. Really great reading, great writer. So go check out devonyanko.com. And that is it for tonight's episode. Thank you all for tuning in live. Again, make sure you go follow Devon, show her some love, and thank her for being on the show. Those of you who ordered wraps on Friday, we sold more in 12 hours than we did in the entire 2014. So it's a lot, and we're getting them out this week. So hopefully keep your eyes on the tracking numbers if you already ordered them. If you have not, there's less than 15% available. So go to the website and get them if you still have not gotten them. And stay tuned. New York Marathon recap film will be dropping this week, and the Cascade Crest 100 film will be dropping very, very soon. So that is it from me. Stick around if you want to watch a little bit of the post show. I'll ask a couple quick questions of Devon before we move into that. Devon, thank you. Any last words for the live viewers?
Thanks for listening to all my long-winded stories.
Seriously, like this was great for me because I could just sit here and like, yes, tell me more. This is amazing. It was awesome. So thank you everyone for watching live. Stick around for a little bit of a post show. Here we go. Excellent. Devon, that was rad. Seriously. We are still live. This is the post show. This is usually where people, if they have any last minute questions or something.
We get wild and crazy.
We get wild and crazy. The question I forgot to answer early on in the show was what I was drinking. I didn't even mention it today. I already downed it. It was a Knob Creek and like a holiday cranberry nog mixture. It was impressively tasty. But, it was very boozy.
Your antioxidants on, right?
Yeah, you never know when a drug test is going to come along. So got to have the cranberry juice with the Knob Creek. And I think Devon was taking it easy tonight and having soda or something.
Yes, but I did bring this was my post-race favorite. Well, this is my favorite right now. 101 Cider House, made in LA. This is the Cactus Red. I found it particularly apropos after running in the desert. It's a super dry cider, but this one actually basically tastes super tart, which, ciders are usually like sweeter, dry or whatever, but this has like a certain tartness that I was like, yeah, this is definitely post-desert. This is really good. So that's my favorite right now.
Sounds amazing. Sounds really tasty.
Save it for another day.
When you finish a race like Javelina or Cape Town, do you eat a lot? Like, do you find yourself gorging for days, or does it take you a couple days before your system is ready?
This race, it actually really surprised me Well, one, the secondary to my actual victory was the victory of us getting back to the hotel in time to get room service. Because it closed at 11 and we're like, there's nothing out by this hotel, so we have to get back by room service. So we had, I didn't eat anything right after because I just like the idea of eating something sweet. I even didn't take a recovery drink. We got back to the hotel, we got back at 10:30. I finished at 8:52, got back at 10:30. So I actually ended up eating the same salad I ate the night before for dinner, which is a steak salad with avocado, and I got some French fries. It's the first time in recorded history that I haven't finished a salad. Anybody who knows me knows that I eat salads that are like in a bowl that's like this big. Like I can take that. But EO 30 miles is also a long way for her. So she was super hungry too. So we tried to go to sleep. Both of us woke up in the middle of the night and it was like, we were taking turns like being little like you just hear a little wrapper like opening up. I like went in the bathroom and hid with a picky bar. And we were the first people to order from room service in the morning. We're like 11 p.m. to 6:30. That first day was weird because like we had breakfast at 6:30 and then we didn't eat. We had burgers at 1. And I thought I was just gonna be starving during that time, but like it's more like I get these really. I didn't eat any like particularly giant meal, but I think also because I just did liquid in this case. So I didn't eat anything super solid for like 15 hours. Like my stomach just wasn't handling as much food as I would have anticipated, which was actually kind of disappointing to me because I really wanted to eat. I wanted to be like, I'm going to have 2 burgers and then I could eat like one. And it's lettuce wrapped. So it's not like it's even that hearty of a burger because I'm gluten intolerant. But it just, the hunger has persisted for more days. This time after Cape Town, it also did, but like I was also flying, so I wasn't really fueling myself super properly or anything. But that's the funniest thing is just like how persistent your hunger can be for like a week.
It was weird after Cascade for me because in my mind, I'm like, oh, after Cascade, you're gonna want to just eat everything, and it's gonna be amazing because you can. You have a calorie deficit. I couldn't eat normally for 4 or 5 days. I would buy a plate, just a giant meal of something I knew I would want.
And you're just like, I'm so disappointing.
Yeah,
which,
so
by the
like
way,
3 bites.
Have you seen your picture in Ultra Running magazine this month?
I haven't gotten my issue yet. Everyone's.
You do not look like a happy camper. It
was bad. It was really bad.
I was like, wow, they went with that. Okay, you look like you want to punch the camera guy.
That was mile 99.9. And it was a very, very rough day.
I recognize I've paced somebody for the last 50 miles of that course when they were having a walk it in kind of day, and it was the first time I had ever met them. So yeah, I understand.
I had Gary Robbins pacing me for that section, and he, bless him for doing that, for walking me in the last 25 miles. I can't imagine as a pacer that being any fun. And we had nasty weather. The weather you were describing for Cape Town sounded identical to the weather we were having there. And it was just on a good day, if the runner is feeling super strong, that course is gorgeous, and being a pacer, that would be amazing. But I can't imagine, putting a pacer through that. Do you find yourself drawn to like smooth runnable trails or more technical stuff? Do you like to challenge yourself?
I like to challenge myself, but if I'm going to like go towards what I like, it's going to be more runnable. I definitely excel as a rhythm runner, so smooth works for me. Which is kind of why I picked Ultra Trail Cape Town, is because I was like, I don't have to just do things that I'm good at. I'm proficient at technical running. I might not be the best technical runner, but I don't necessarily have to be the best technical runner. I don't have to be the best climber in order to do a race that has climbing. But I definitely, I can see myself being like, I am definitely the biggest threat to anybody on a runnable course versus like a more technical course. Yeah.
Really great question here from Kimasabe. Oh, I just scrolled by it. How does it work for you as a gluten intolerant and baking? I was curious about that as well. Do you have gluten-free stuff available in your bakery, or does
Well,
that
we
not
have a
come into
full
play?
cafe too. Um, I like to say that it just means that I don't have to use willpower. It's kind of helpful, actually. I have done. We have a couple of gluten-free items on the menu. We have these gluten-free muffins that I used to make for my personal chef clients because most of my personal chef clients were special needs eaters like myself. And these muffins, people accuse me of filling with crack because they like them so much. So we have those. We have a gluten-free cookie that I developed using my husband, like our regular gluten-free cookie recipe. And I just adapted it to gluten-free. But it's so good that I get super paranoid every time I eat one that I'm eating a regular cookie because it looks the same and and I will have like regular bakers be like, which one is it? And they'll be like, I have no idea. So,
Wow.
and our menu has our cafe menu. We do breakfast and lunch. So my personal favorite off the menu is a breakfast salad, which is like a Lyonnaise salad. So it's poached egg, bacon, pickled shallots, greens. I eat that like every day. And we have things like baked eggs. So there's options for me. I've never been a huge baked good person. So, with my husband being passionate about baking, it was kind of an easy thing where it's like, this isn't about like me doing gluten-free or whatever. It's like, no, the man loves bread. Like, you should bring him on if you want to, if there's somebody out there who does a blog about bread, you should put Nathan on it because he'll talk to you for like 5 hours.
I mean, it sounds, part of me is like, man, it would be amazing to get a baker on here because all I want to do is just eat bread all the time. So maybe you can tell me why that is and tell me recipes. And yeah. It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to visit the bakery again. I'll be up there for North Face. Are you running any of the distances? Or are you going to kind of spectate?
I will be around, but I am not running any of the distances, so I will be heckling. Actually, I might go back to my previous post. Nathan and I had developed this system for a couple of years where we would wait for all the runners where they're coming down, taking their headlamps off. And we would just be like, the first person that knows you just gives you their headlamp. And then we would collect like 30 to 40 headlamps by the time we were done. It was awesome. I mean, we gave them back, but if you can't find me, you don't get your headlamp back. But we like the second year we went with a basket because we were like, okay, last year I just ended up with like all these on because I also know because of where I've lived around the country and like the different communities, like I know like out of the top runners, especially like I'm gonna know more than like 75% of them. Like, hey Devin, here's my headlamp. Hey. So I will. Are you running the 50 mile?
I am. Yes, I believe I'm signed up for the 50 miler, but based off of my New York Marathon experience last week, I'm probably going to just go to the 50K, if not spectate. I feel like I've had a pretty good year, and I want to save some legs for next year and get speed back into them. So I'm undecided. I have a couple weeks to see how my body bounces back. Yeah. We'll see if the 50 miler is even on that radar. I doubt it, but maybe the 50K. But I'm going. Kim, my wife, is running the 50K.
Well, if it's a bad weather day, just don't do it.
Call it. Yeah, I did 2012, which was the really bad.
Oh, yeah, was it 12? Yeah, I paced Lizzie Hawker that year, and she was having a really rough go. That was terrible.
That was my first ultra. It was the 50K, and I you know how it is for your first ultra. You might be a little bit nervous. For some reason, on that day, I was terrified because the weather reports and all the emails and stuff you get beforehand are like, prepare for the worst, don't die, have fun. Well, then I'm gonna let you go. It's getting late here on the West Coast, and I want to make sure that you. I guess you don't have the night shift tonight.
No more night shift.
You get to relax and enjoy it. Well, Devin, a huge congrats on Javelina and Ultra Trail Cape Town. Can't wait to follow you and see what happens next, and we'll see you in Marin.
Yes.
In December. Yes. Again, those of you watching live, Devin, where can people find you?
DevonYanko.com, Fast Foodie Cooks, and Fast Foodie. And if you want to follow my husband on Instagram, it's MHBreadButter, because then you can get lots of food porn pictures.
Do it. And visit the cafe, visit the bakery, show them some love, and get some delicious baked goods. Yep. I know I'll probably be taking all the things when I'm there in December. And thank you to your sponsors as well, Wazelle, Hoka, Julbo. We're big fans of Wazelle here in the house.
Yes.
good people, good business. So that's it. Thank you everyone for tuning in live. We'll see you guys next Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, for another Ginger Runner Live, episode number 92. We're getting up there. We gotta do something big for the 100 episode mark, whatever that might be. That's it. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Bye.